Cialdini. Graham, look at that haircut, mate. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. We had a fight with the Clippers. We went short, and then we ran out of bravery or red wine maybe and left the top.
Similar situation here.
Yeah.
Right out at the back there, though, I'm going for the sort of like, I'm hoping the mullet is coming back. Today, mate, we're going to be looking at Robert Cialdini's influence pattern and the 6 areas of influence. And, a lot of people know about this. I'm sure many of you out there know about it. But just some of the ideas about things that you could actually do to put those influence forms into your pitches or when you're trying to woo a client. So, Graham, just want to give us an overview.
Yeah, promoted by the APMP, which is where I got introduced to it. So really good model. 6 areas to think about to influence people. One thing is reciprocity, consistency, liking, social proof, scarcity, and authority. Did I say that one? Is that right? Did I get all 6?
Right. I think
I got them there. Yeah, I remembered them just about. Yeah.
Well, we're going to go through them now anyway. Let's start with reciprocity. And reciprocity is basically giving stuff away in order to receive back. And it's not being afraid of giving some things away. And you see this on so many websites, don't you? It's almost like the transitional call to action, which is click here for our 5 top tips on whatever. Yeah. But actually, it reminds me of something we talked about last week about a team that my wife was working with who didn't win because the person leading the bid on the other side had spent 10 years just dropping into the offices of the client in Rotterdam, just talking about issues that were coming up and had built that level of trust because he'd given stuff away. He'd done free consultancy, essentially. And there was a sense there of, wanting to give back because something had been given to you.
Let's look at consistency. So people tend to be compelled to go with what they know, the status quo, and repeat a decision they've made. So like, it's great if you're the incumbent, you've been doing a great job, because kind of that puts you in pole position to re-win the bid, right? Unless you've been dropping the ball. But then it's also really tough if you're not the incumbent, because you've got to try and break that cycle somehow, which is always a bit of a challenge. So you can use it to your advantage if you're incumbent. If you're not, you need to really get your thinking hats on and work out how you break that sense of the status quo.
Absolutely. There's a question from my hypnotherapy days, my hypnotherapy training, which is a great question that I actually told my son to use when he was first getting into the job market. And the question goes something like this: if you choose me, what will I be doing in 6 months' time that will make you sure that you made the right decision?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is that gets the client imagining, what does good look like? They start picturing you in the position.
Yeah.
If you choose us, what will we be doing in 6 months' time that will make you sure you made the right decision? You will get so much information back from them. Yeah, let's do social proof. You see this on LinkedIn everywhere. The little banner photo of people standing in front. In fact, I've got one myself. People standing in front of a group of people giving a talk to a crowd. It's the proof that you are accepted by the majority of people. It's why we put logos on our websites. It's why we tell stories about the big clients that we've worked with. That's social proof to prove that you have worked with people who mean something. Likability.
Likability. Well, we've always said people buy from people like and trust, right? And that's the likability angle here, I suppose, because particularly the bigger the decision, the less likely you are to give it to somebody you've never met. And we talked about this before, building up that relationship model, how you get to that trusted advisor kind of space. And to get there, you have to actually build a bit of rapport and a bit of between the two people, right? So that's really important. Think about that model and get around the same side as the table as the buyer and kind of be working with them and finding that common ground and that sort of thing. That's incredibly important.
Incredibly important. I saw this done so well middle of last year by a team I was working with. They were pitching to a huge bank for a big piece of work. And the person in charge of the bid, the leader of the bid, told a story right at the beginning, because he was a customer of the bank, and he told about the level of service. It was a real story about buying a suit in Jermyn Street and the level of service that he got when his card suddenly was maxed out, and how they solved it for him. And then he tied it back into, and that sort of replicates a lot of the service that we want to be able to give you. And so he was showing that he liked them. He became likable because he was talking about them and what great service he'd had. And so it was a great story to show that likability thing. People like people who are authorities on things. If you've got letters after your name, that's fantastic. But just imagine if you were watching a video at the moment by somebody who'd presented to the APMP conference. There is a man of authority.
Imagine that, how lucky.
If only we had one of them.
David Pullen, VP of Story Spotters there, live. Yeah, exactly. Job titles, but it's also what you're saying, right? It's the commanding a bit of authority. What do people say? If you know 5% more than everybody else in the room, you become the expert. I mean, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? We trust people mostly in positions of authority.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So what do you do in a bid? This is where you bring in the top technical person in your company to talk to the client. It's kind of almost like you're doing them a favor. It's when the CEO comes in and shows how important the pitch is to them. That's the sort of time you do it.
Exactly.
If done well. You do it wrongly, CEO comes in. Sorry, go on, David. Go on.
No, you're right. I think you're going to say the same thing. CEO comes in, you never see him ever again.
Yeah.
And the last one, scarcity. Tell us about scarcity, Graham.
Well, David, if you buy one of these podcasts now, you can get the others for free for the next 37 seconds. That's what we're trying to do here. People, I mean, that seems so silly, some of those offers you see at the supermarket or on TV, but it does attract people to them. You think that something's only available for a certain amount of time. It's difficult to put it into a pitch.
I have seen it done. A couple of times I've seen it done well. I mean, on a number of occasions, if people are sort of like putting off the decision, if it isn't a must-buy situation, but a could-buy situation, the way that you present the team and say, listen, this team isn't going to hang around forever. I mean, this is you are seeing the A team here, and they will move on to other things. And actually, it goes back to the authority thing as well. I saw this done brilliantly with a team I was working with many years ago now, and they had one person internally, a real authority on this particular area that they were pitching on, who was a really scarce resort. I mean, he basically flew around the world just sprinkling fairy dust on organizations and just giving advice left, right, and center. And it was like, if you want this person, then the inference was, if you want this person who is, to all intents, a guru in this industry, then we're the people that you're going to have to go with. And so there was the authority and the scarcity tied together. Well, Graham, all I can say is I like you very much. You're quite scarce because I need to see you on these things. And when you finally buy me a beer at the rugby, I will buy you one back in the sense of reciprocation. And
I know you're very consistent in the fact that you always have beer at the rugby, David. So I'm looking forward to seeing that influential something going on.
Next week, scripts.
Yes.
I've enjoyed it again, Graham. I always say that, but it's always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, David. Really looking forward to next week, actually. It's a real good one.
Nice one. Take care, everyone. See you next week.
Bye-bye.